Today we're looking at multiplying a 3-digit number by a 1-digit number. So for example, we're going to be finding 263 times 3. So that's 263 sets of 3. So we're going to be looking at an expanded formal method and then a contracted formal method. But we're going to start by revising the mental calculation that we completed earlier in the term. So to solve this mentally, I initially drew my empty number line. So you can see that I started at 0, I added my hundreds, so that's 200 sets of 3. I added my tens, that's 10 sets of 3, 60 sets of 3. And I added my ones, so that was 3 sets of 3. And I kept a running total at the bottom. For those of you who don't like using number lines, you could also write similar notes like this. So I completed 200 sets of 3 mentally and made a note to remind myself. Then I added on the 60 sets of 3. And then I added on the 3 sets of 3. And here, for anybody who prefers to write as an equation, I partition the 263 in exactly the same way, so hundreds, tens and ones. So 200 sets of 3, 60 sets of 3, and then 3 threes. And then, of course, to find the answer, the total, I would recombine those together. So, if you understood those notes to help you with your mental calculation, you're probably ready to try a formal notation. So, let's have a look. We'll look at the expanded version first. So, I've got 263 sets of 3. So, I'm going to start with the ones. Now, when we calculate mentally, we tend to start with the highest value digit. However, when we calculate using a formal written method, we start with the lowest value digit. So in this case, that's 3 ones. So I'm still going to make my notes, 3 sets of 3, just to help me along the way. So that makes 9. So I can just put that in there, in the ones column. I'm now going to look at the tens column, because that's the next highest value digit. So that's 60 sets of 3, which is 180. So I'm going to write that in, and I do need to be careful to line my columns up neatly. And if you remember from when we've solved problems using a column method before, I'm just adding these zeros. We don't usually add zeros to that side of a number because it tends not to affect the value, unless we're looking at some decimals. However, in this instance I will, just to keep my work organised. So I've got 200 sets of 3, which makes 600. So I've partitioned my 3-digit number to calculate each part. I'm now going to recombine. So I've ended up with 9 ones, 8 tens and 7 hundreds. So that's 789. We're now going to have a look at the contracted method. It starts in exactly the same way. Now there's no rush to get onto this contracted method. If you spend the rest of your life writing this expanded method, that's not a problem. You'll still be able to calculate accurately. So got my hundreds, tens and ones. These methods are exactly the same. So as I started with the expanded method, working with the lowest value digit, I'm going to do the same with the contracted method. I'm also going to use my notes here. So even though you're on a contracted method, doesn't mean you can't write a few notes at the side. So I've got 3 threes are 9. So I might write the whole equation out, or I might just put a note like that, just to remind me. So that can go straight into the ones column because it's just ones. If it bridged 10, it would obviously be a slightly different issue, but it doesn't bridge 10, so it just goes in the 9s column. So I've now got 60 sets of 3. So again, I could make some notes, or I might just make a little note at the side, or I might do it all mentally, see where you're up to. Now I know that the ones column isn't going to change from now on because it's always going to end in a 0, so I can keep that 9 there, no problem. I'm looking at the tens column, so I can put my 8 there. So that's 8 tens. But I've got some hundreds here. I've got a 100 here. Now I can't put my 100 right in the answer box yet because it's going to be in the way when I do the next part of the calculation. So I'm just putting it in the hundreds column but underneath. So it's still in the hundreds columns but it's not getting in the way of my final total. So now I'm going to do 200 times 3. So I might write an equation to help me, or I might just make a little note at the side. So I've got 600. So I can't just put 6 in there because I need to remember this 100. And the 100, if you remember, came from the 60 sets of 3. So altogether, I've got 789. Right, thank you and good luck with that.